All right, so we're going to talk about neural adaptations to resistance training. Two simple outcomes, kind of generic and vague, because there's 5 or 6 adaptations that we're going to talk about. And I just realized I spelled adaptations wrong. All right, so we've got, looks like 5 things. So synchronization, recruitment, rate coding, neural drive, and autogenic inhibition. So with each of these, you need to be able to identify them, define them, and describe the importance of them. All right, so synchronization. So we've got some synchronized swimmers here. Well, and synchronization doesn't really mean, or it's a little bit different than what's going on here. Normally, when we recruit motor units, we do it in an asynchronous manner, meaning I'll recruit motor unit A, then I'll recruit motor unit B. So as a result, you have different motor units firing at different times. So this is like that tug of war analogy I used earlier in the semester, where you've got 10 people on a tug of war team. If they're firing asynchronously, that'd be like the first 5 are pulling, then the second 5 are pulling. So they're going to generate force, but they would generate more force if all 10 of them pulled at the same time. And so training allows this to happen, or it causes this to happen. So motor units are recruited synchronously, which means they're activated at the same time, which means more force is produced in a given moment. So then there's recruitment. Okay, so training leads to recruitment of more motor units. Okay, so this isn't necessarily synchronization, but now I'm just telling more motor units, hey, we need more motor units. And so with more motor units, I have more fibers being excited. That means more calcium is released, more calcium, more cross bridges, more force. And so now I'm just adding to the number of available motor units, muscle fibers that are available to produce force. Remember, cross bridges are always the answer. Next, we have rate coding. Okay, so rate coding, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute. Resistance training increases motor or neural drive. Okay, it also might lead to increased rate coding. So motor drive is just like how much signal can be sent out from your brain. Okay, your brain can't just send unlimited signals, unlimited action potentials. Okay, there's a finite number. Now, what that number is, we don't know. All right, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it can only release, or it can only send out so many signals in a given moment. All right, well, rate coding is similar-ish. So rate coding just is the ability of a motor unit to fire more frequently. Okay, and if a motor unit can fire more frequently, it's going to be able to generate more force. If you remember from Unit 2, when we were talking about if a motor unit fires and then it fires a second time before relaxation is completely done, that motor unit's going to produce greater force. And if you stimulate a motor unit often enough, it'll eventually generate a long or a big sustained forceful contraction that we call tetanus. So neural drive, though, is kind of this combination of recruitment and rate coding. But like I said, the nervous system can only send out so much signal at once. So the central nervous system will talk to the peripheral nervous system, which will activate the fibers. Okay, so if we increase the ability of the central nervous system to send out signals, then we can recruit more motor units. More motor units, more cross bridges, more force. Okay, but there is some evidence to suggest that resistance training does in fact improve or increase the amount of neural drive that we have. Next, we have autogenic inhibition. So you remember back several weeks ago, we talked about the Golgi tendon organ. And the Golgi tendon organ is activated when your muscle increases the amount of tension, or the rate with which the tension your muscle is experiencing increases rapidly, and it causes the muscle to relax so it doesn't cause damage. Okay, Golgi tendon organ, it's a safety mechanism. We don't want to damage a muscle. We don't want to injure a muscle. Well, resistance training reduces the effect of the Golgi tendon organs. Basically, it kind of shuts them off, or at least turns them down. Okay, and if you do that, then your muscle is going to be able to generate more force, and more force. That's what we're striving for oftentimes with resistance training. It's this autogenic inhibition that can also lead to some pretty severe injuries, especially in highly trained athletes. Like the injuries that most of us suffer are very different from those that elite athletes suffer. Like I think the worst thing that's ever happened to me as a result of exercise is I thought I tore a meniscus in my knee, and I didn't even do that. Whereas you'll read or hear or see, someone with a torn hamstring or a torn pec or whatever, just some of these catastrophic injuries that most of us will never generate enough force to even have to worry about. And then finally, we have co-activation. And co-activation is exactly what it sounds like. We're activating kind of multiple sets of muscles. And really what it is, we're activating specific sets of muscles. So we're activating agonist muscles, while at the same time, we're turning off antagonistic muscles. And so an example of this is with elbow flexion, right? So my agonists are the biceps. My antagonists are the triceps. So if I've done resistance training, I'm going to really be able to activate those biceps, and I'm going to turn off the triceps. Ultimately, this leads to a greater force production. So here are the 2 things that I hope you can do after watching this lecture.